You had this coming, Craig, okay? There was no way around it. If you were going to neglect and push off iPadOS so much, then I was eventually going to put my foot down and boycott this product as I am today. So it's been a long time coming, but I have officially sold off my iPad Pro. It is no longer with me after nearly 5 years of ownership. So let's talk about it. In case you want the nitty-gritty details, I sold my iPad Pro and Apple Pencil and all the accessories with it. Yes, I didn't keep anything around. For the right price of $420. Set by the buyer, not by me. Considering it was only 64 gigs, I thought it was a decent selling price and getting lots of other offers on it that were not too compelling. But many of you may be wondering, oh, perfect, now he has enough money to replace it with an iPad mini. He can downgrade his iPad just like how he downgraded his iPhone. And the truth is, no, actually, this is a departure from the entire product segment for me, as on this channel I am trying to prove to more and more people how we can get by with less, how we don't necessarily need to buy the latest and greatest or have as much as possible building out your ecosystem. And I've ran polls in the past on X or whatever, asking people what their least used Apple product was in the ecosystem. Like, what are you touching and using and not interacting with the least in your tech world? And it seems like a lot of people voted the same way I did, which was with the iPad. It became abundantly clear when I realized that on all of our travels overseas and in different parts of the country, I was away from home for close to 3 months, and at no point in those 3 months did I ever pack and take my iPad with me. And I've basically had some kind of iPad as my, daily or whatever since the iPad Air originally came out, like in 2014. I've had an iPad for a while, but over time, I think my usage of it has changed. For one, I felt like the iPhone got a little bit more intuitive and easy to multitask, especially with gestures now. It's just so simple and easy to swipe back and forth between apps, which I do a lot. And to me, that kind of diminished a lot of the need for split screen multitasking, which for a lot of people, that's kind of the one inherent advantage the iPad offers. And it feels like that advantage gets diminished every single year when Apple starts software locking more and more Pro features to the higher end iPads. You need the M1 chip for that. You need the M2 chip for that. And it's not even so much that they make iPadOS worse all that much, although there is things like iPadOS 14, which allowed for way more apps and way more widgets on the home screen all at once. No, it wasn't so much them making iPadOS worse. To me, it was just complacency. It was like, at one point, this iPad Pro, yes, I kept the top of the box. This used to be my favorite Apple product. I loved the silicon, I loved the display, I loved the biometrics, but all of this stuff got better and improved on other product segments. The iPhone has grown so much since 2018, and so has the Mac by a wide margin. We've gotten mini LED and 120 hertz. We brought back legacy ports. We improved the speaker quality, the microphone quality, and of course, Apple Silicon has been amazing to the point that the iPad just kind of stagnated. And the hardware can get really, really good and get more and more overkill every year, but that software team just felt like they kept giving up. It was like, yeah, the iPhone's gaining things and the Mac's gaining things, but iPadOS, it's just a note-taking media consumption device, so we don't have to try any harder with that. So it gave me very little incentive or very little motivation to, for one, upgrade my iPad, but as I've noticed in more recent history, even use my iPad, because my iPhone screen has gotten bigger, iOS has gotten more capable with things like subject lift, which definitely killed a substantial amount of usage of my iPad, because over time, once I started realizing that the MacBooks were getting so good and iOS was getting so many new features and new apps that the iPad wasn't, I just kept running to my iPhone or my Mac for more media consumption stuff, and my iPad was just like my video thumbnail maker. For a long time, that was pretty much all I used my iPad for. I would just go to that to mask out objects for my thumbnails and have a little bit of, graphic design control with the text and stuff. But the truth is, those great photo editing apps are still on the iPhone, and they're still very capable. And now with Subject Lift, there's less and less reason for me to grab my Apple Pencil and mask out objects because iOS can do it for me, and that makes making a video thumbnail on my iPhone a heck of a lot easier. So once that came around, my iPad basically just became this doorstop that would sit on my desk. And to be honest with you, even though I probably could have spec'd around an iPad Pro a little bit longer and find someone with a better deal or someone willing to pay more for it, I just genuinely wanted my iPad to go to someone who needs it. I'm not trying to make the argument in today's video that no one should own an iPad and that they're completely useless. I'm just explaining why it was not useful for my particular uses anymore, and I just wasn't taking it with me me on trips. And now that I had evidence that basically I could survive and actually thrive and be perfectly happy going 3, 4, 5 months without even touching my tablet, it just kind of felt wasteful. I was like, I don't really want to keep this thing if there's someone else out there that could take better utilization of it. You know, note taking and having a nice big screen that's 120 hertz and having Face ID. That's a great media consumption device for many people out there. And I genuinely still believe that. For a lot of people, this can replace their laptop, but I've got a laptop and it can't replace it. It's not like we all have the exact same needs in our laptops. And for some people out there, the iPad is just enough, you know, to browse the web, check email, and then they can turn it in the portrait orientation, take it to class with them and take notes or draw. But for me, I kept flocking to my MacBook Pro because the display was better, the speakers were better, the ports were better, and the software was just infinitely more capable with macOS. And there was a lot of, final straws that I'm sure you guys remember. Trying out the M1 iPad Pro, being disappointed by how little I could do with that fundamentally flawed Files app. And then, of course, Apple finally caving and saying, yes, all right, we'll bring Final Cut and Logic to the iPad. And I try them out, and, they're memberships now instead of one-time purchases, and they're fundamentally limited. Like, they leave out a ton of features. There's a bunch of stuff the Mac version of Final Cut can do that the iPad can't. So I was like, all right, even if this was a great iPad app, I still have to pay more for it now. Like, I would have to convince myself to go out, buy a newer iPad that is barely different from my 2018 one, but according to Apple, A12X chip is just incapable of running Final Cut, even though we've got old Intel Macs that were way slower that ran Final Cut. But no. Apple's like, you need an M1 chip and you need mini LED, and then I'd have to buy the keyboard case and still have limited I/O and then have to deal with compromised software just to pay $5 a month, and who knows, they'll probably raise the price on it again. And that's what kind of made it feel somewhat offensive to me. I was like, all right, if you want to make the case that the tablet should just be different from the laptop, it can't do all the same things. It's just meant to be a different approach to, a media consumption device and just do some basic editing. And sure, it's more capable than it was before. All right, I get that. But to be charging, to get an M1 or M2 iPad Pro, $800, $1,000. And now if you want to spec up the storage to get more RAM, we're talking $2,000 for something that's going to be this limited. That's when it just starts to offend me. I'm just like, guys, don't be pitching this thing as a video production tool if you're going to leave out such basic fundamental things. And I know a lot of people out there were like, well, now that it's a membership, now that it's an app, we can get more regular, frequent updates with Final Cut on the iPad. Now, Final Cut will actually be like readily updated with new features and new capabilities. And as far as I'm aware, I'm not hearing about any of them. It feels like they just kind of dropped the app and all of its limitations, which I went into extensive detail on my Final Cut for iPad video. And through all of those limitations, still charging $5 a month, just, it doesn't sit right with me. So, no, I'm not saying no one should buy an iPad, but I just thought you guys should be in the know that I couldn't justify it anymore, and it felt wasteful to just have this really capable, really great tablet sitting around doing nothing. And I had to force myself a lot of the time to go out of the way to try and use it, and even then, I felt like, oh, wait, I don't have the wallet app here, or I don't have optimized battery charging here, and my iPhone has access to so many of these features and apps that are not available on the iPad, and sometimes it's not always up to the iPad itself. Sometimes a lot of third-party app developers don't even put their stuff or don't update their stuff on the iPad. So I just felt like I had to keep going back to the phone over and over. So I had proven to myself that I could get by without it, and I wanted it to go to someone who could utilize it. So it's no longer here. Rip Drew's iPad 2018 to 2023, and I wanted to put my mouth where my money is by proving to you guys that, okay, it's no longer here. Here's my list of Apple ID devices. I promise I'm not using it somewhere in the background. And in full transparency, my wife does still use a 2017 iPad Pro, but it's basically her dedicated e-reader. She just has books on it, and she uses it for a bunch of local storage because way back when I originally got it, I for some reason opted for the 512 gig option. So she kind of likes to offload a lot of pictures and videos onto that tablet, but it's on airplane mode at all times. So I don't touch it. I don't use it. That thing's got a lightning port on it anyway. So now I'm perfectly content with no tablet directly attached to me anyway. Are you guys still rocking your iPads? Do you use them every single day? Let me know if you're having these skeptical thoughts on the future of tablets in general. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. Seriously, helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. Have an excellent rest of your day.